that is the Gold Cup hero. Two of the most admirable chasers you could possibly wish to see.
Relentless, remorseless, and pounding Cheltenham Star into submission.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Racehour, brought to you with our friends at bookmakers.co.uk. It's myself, Dean Ryan, in the towers of bookmakers.co.uk. Diarmuid Nolan is here.
I am, most certainly.
Good man. Paddy Aspell is also here.
How are we, lads?
All good, all good. Happy New Year to you both and to all our listeners. It's been a little while since we did this podcast, but the rumours are not true. We haven't joined the war of the podcast. We have not all fallen out. No WhatsApp history has been exchanged. And believe it or not, there's been no resignation. So we're in good place, I think.
We're in a great place.
Paddy, you didn't quit. Dermo, you're still here. And I think there's still other guests, hopefully, to come throughout the year. We're looking forward to a big year on the Racehour.
Yeah, the purge of the podcast. Isn't that what, yeah.
Well, World War III is on the horizon as well.
But, this is actually my favourite few weeks of the Racehour podcast always, because we have a different race at the Cheltenham Festival each week. And last year, there was Abacadbras Battleoverdoyen and Alvin Photo, and we unearthed a good few there and then. So hopefully now we can do the very same this year.
Yeah, well, the focus slightly changes now on the Racehour as we come through January and February on our way to Cheltenham. People remember from last year that we became very Cheltenham centred. It's not going to change too much. We will still look back at eye catchers and previous weekends racing. We will still look at weekend racing ahead as well on the podcast, but then we will try and mix it up with a bit of Cheltenham focus in terms of anti-post betting. What might happen is that, if we do this in years to come, that we'll end up with a 6 or 7 day festival and we'll never have any clue, and we'll probably have to cancel all that stuff, but we'll come to that bit later on. Let's talk a little bit about Christmas, because as I say, we haven't been on since before all the big Christmas racing. Some of the eye catchers, let's just talk about some of the winners that went and got it done. I might start with the King George. Llandres Ober winning the King George again. I don't think any of us put him on that pedestal. We all thought he perhaps didn't win the strongest King George the year before. This one looks stronger, and he still won, Demo.
He won. You only respect him, but again, I think he was the best horse on the day, obviously. But I think Surname's jumping was not his jumping, but he seemed over the top to me. I think that race against Altior took an awful lot out of him.
Seems to have taken a lot out of Altior as well.
Yeah, because, like the two of them clearly haven't been right after it. I wasn't happy with Surname. Obviously, I was on Lost in Translation, but I happened to just I tracked Surname the whole way around. And you just wouldn't have been happy with him from the second fence. He just didn't look happy. Harry Cobden had to roast him into a few of them. So it was a kind of a race where you look at it and you go, the winner is very good. He's a really lovely horse. Paddy Aspell was the one that was saying pre-Christmas that it wasn't as straightforward a choice. It turns out that Harry Cobden got it wrong. But Lost in Translation, that's not his running. Clearly he went for a breeding operation straight away afterwards. Something has gone wrong there. All happened a bit quickly for him anyway, but it was just one of those things. And Llandres Ober was a very worthy winner, but form I'd be very quick to forget, to be honest.
Potentially so. I mean, Paddy, you did say that it wasn't actually a penalty kick of a decision for Harry Cobden, and it's a great day for Sam Twiston-Davies to go and win a King George on Llandres Ober, and Paul Nicholls going to have both horses exactly where he wants them for a race like that. Perhaps Surname didn't just get home, and Harry Cobden, unfortunately, when you get to the echelons that he's got to in racing and you have these choices to make, it used to be a Ruby Walsh issue, it used to be a Tony McCoy issue, now it's kind of a Paul Townend issue maybe. Dickie Johnson, he's got this one wrong, but he did win it the year before. It was a cracking race, Paddy.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I bet it was just a horrible decision for Harry, really. And I think, obviously, when figures come into it, people would have really knocked him, I think, for going against Surname. So I think really his hand was up behind his back a little bit, really. But we all know that the winner, that is his bag. It's flat tracks, rolling along. He jumps very well. He's a big, strong, massive horse. So yeah, it was a horrible decision, and I'm sure it was one he was always pretty sure could well bite him in the backside. And unfortunately it did, but I don't really think he got it drastically wrong in the fact that he just picked the wrong one on the day. I do think that his own horse didn't run nowhere near up to form.
Yeah.
Like Dermot said, his jumping wasn't just on point. And the thing is, when he was passed and beaten, he really backed out of it pretty quickly, like a horse who, just wasn't quite right. And, I think, to be honest, there was only one horse on the day performed, and that was the winner, because, the Tizard horse completely bombed out. It was just a one horse race in the end. But look, that's racing, and unfortunately for Harry Cobden, he can only ride one, and they're nice choices to have to make in a way, but unfortunately he came out the wrong end of it.
Yeah, it's part and parcel of success, as I was, alluding to with Harry Cobden. He's going to have more decisions like that to make as he goes through his career, and he's going to learn. You can't get it. They're not machines. One turns up, one doesn't turn up. There's not a lot you can do about it. I still thought Surname ran a big race, and perhaps that battle with Altior, although it looked cosy enough at the time that he was able to potentially, maybe outstay him, maybe outjump Altior on that day, and probably, left a little mark, and that can happen because it was two very good racehorses against each other. We'll talk about what we might take forward to a Gold Cup later on in the podcast, because we are going to talk about the Gold Cup towards the end. So we'll talk about the likes of Lost in Translation, Surname and Clandazoba again when we get there. Let's talk about a champion hurdle horse that sprang now to the top of the market, actually beating a slightly more fancied one, certainly in the build-up to the race when we spoke about it on the Racehour podcast, and that was Epatante, winning over Christmas, and is now favourite for the champion hurdle demo. This market is up in the air. It seems to have a new favourite. I don't know if I want to live in a world where Epatante is favourite for the champion hurdle at this stage of the season, even though, I would have fancied it pick up a nice handicap.
I can't believe it, to be honest with you. I can't believe that this is where we are with this market. Like, it's incredible. 5-2 favourites. Epatante, she was brilliant. She was back like she wasn't going to be beaten as well. Barry Geraghty rode her like again that she was he was riding Faugheen. And you just kind of watch the race going, God, she is very, very good. But again, we have to stop asking ourselves the question, what are they beating? Because there's nothing in the division. So that form, we could well end up with a situation in March where that form is good enough to win the champion hurdle. Because we give out about the 2 mile chasing division an awful lot. But the champion hurdles have been horses are kind of falling in the last few years as well. There's only one horse who seems to kind of streak away with it, really. Bouvardere won for 2 years. A lot of people still aren't convinced that he's a top class animal. I am, obviously. Espardalen won, but everything else seemed to just kind of fall away. And now this year again, JP McManus just might be in the right place at the right time with another horse that just kind of might just fall in, because Nicky Henderson's horses, none of them look good enough. And the more you go through it, Classical Dream, he blew his head off again over Christmas, and you're just kind of wondering to yourself, what is there actually in the market? But it's a division that I'm just going to stay away from for the time being and just see what might crop up in the next few weeks, maybe. I'm
still playing the Classical Dream, but I can't base it on.
You can't vindicate it.
No, I struggle to. He's a spring horse, maybe. Paddy, it was a taking performance, and that champion hurdle picture gets muddier as we go along. But I guess she is fair entitled to be at the top of it.
Yeah, I think so. Last year I just thought, obviously the only blip really is our festival run where she did go off favourite for the Mayor's Novice, but she was desperately disappointing. Prior to that, she had always just had this inkling to over race and just do a bit too much. But I think she has mentally summered very well, and I just think we've got a different mare this time around, because on each occasion that we have seen her since she's reappeared, she's been much, much different, much calmer, looks a lot easier to ride, a lot more straightforward. And that Kempton performance the other day, I know old Silver Streak, he is capable of a very big performance on his day, so you can't really say he's a bit of a back number, but she really quickened up and left him from the back of the last in the Christmas hurdle. I thought she was very good, and she does deserve her place at the head of affairs at the minute. But I suppose we've just got to sort of sort through them and see maybe what's going to turn up on the day, really. But I suppose at the minute, around about 7-2, she probably just does edge it, but it certainly just wouldn't have you jumping out of your seat with excitement, the champion hurdle picture at the minute, would it?
No, I think it needs a couple of stellar performances from one or two others to set up at least a three-way go. And maybe Epatante comes out and does something similar again, and then she'll only shorten. We're gonna find out, and that's why I think Cheltenham at the moment, if you look across the markets, across the whole picture, there aren't too many standout favourites even for the big championship races. So that's got to be a positive thing from a punter's point of view. There is some value to be found there. Try and find it though. That's the tricky part. Let's talk about a few Irish horses. Dermo, I might let you roll away with Battleoverdoyen and Abacadabras.
Yeah, so Abacadabras was obviously outstanding, but we didn't get the question really answered in regards to him. I think that Blue Starry just didn't run any sort of a race. Fell away far too quickly for that to be the form. But still, Abacadabra is a horse that travels supremely well. And as far as the Supreme goes, I haven't found another horse yet that I think is as good as him. I think he is the Supreme horse at the moment, unless they go back with Envoi Allen. As good as the Tizard novices are.
Master Debonair looks decent.
Yeah,
but that was
you know,
on real background.
Fiddler on the Roof
looks
as well.
decent,
But
yeah.
Abacadabra to me looks like the kind of a horse that on good ground he could just skip away from him were it to be good, but there's absolutely no guarantee on that, obviously. And the other one is Battleoverdoyen, who I've been saying all season is my RSA horse. I will obviously be looking for something bigger as well in the market as time goes on, but I'm very happy with my position in that market. I think he's absolutely excellent. The horse that he beat is the favourite for the 4 miler, or 3 mile sixer, and will take an awful lot of beating in that as well. Champagne Classic, but Battleoverdoyen, his jumping is so smooth. He showed a bit of a turn of pace as well. He's done an awful lot more than anything else now in the market, experience wise. And Champ fell, and Champ, just to me, as big as his engine was, and he was actually kind of impressing me the most that he has done so far before that fall. He just looks a big dope, and it's I just think Battleoverdoyen is just at this juncture is a better horse than him.
Yeah.
So I think as far as the Cheltenham markets goes, we have really a lot of them have been shaped, but Abacadabra and Battleoverdoyen for me are the two to really take out at Christmas.
Sure, I can see that. Paddy, I might ask you about some of the other ones. I mean, let's include Champ in this conversation because when he was running in the UK, I thought he got very low for Barry a couple of times, and it seems like almost like the concentration just switched off at the end to bring about the fall.
Yeah, I think, Ted Walsh always, he does sum it up right with some horses. They just aren't as clever as others, and I think Champ fits that bill because, going down to the last, he wasn't good at Newbury when he'd won the time before, but there was excuses there because he did get messed around early and he'd done enough wrong and still won, and he pulled it out of the fire a little bit. But the other day I thought he'd done plenty right, and there was no real need for him to do that going to the last. I know people were mentioning about Barry looking around, but it's not like he did it 2 strides away from the fence and he's made Champ do that.
Sure.
He had a hold of his head. People used to knock Ruby all the time about horses falling at the last, but I think you will see far more horses fall by a jockey being too decisive and therefore decking a horse. I think if you sit there and a horse falls, you can't accuse a jockey of decking a horse because he hasn't done anything. You've sat there. Mm-hmm. The horse does the jumping, not the jockey. And he literally completely lost concentration, and the first thing to hit the fence was his chest, and it was a really silly mistake, and he's ended up on the floor. I just think he isn't a complete natural. He did look better the other day, but then he went and did that when he looked like he had all the hard work done. Yeah. For me, I couldn't have him simply because of that trait that's in him, because you really can't miss a beat on the big massive days come March, and he's just let me down once or twice too often now with his lack of concentration. And I think over fences in at the deep end, he's gotten away with it over hurdles. It's surely gonna make him come up short. So I couldn't have him, to be honest.
Completely agree with you, and I think it's something that I picked up on the first time I seen him jump, that I just thought that the landing gear was coming down a little bit slow. He kind of overpitches a bit and then he gets very low, so you do take a chance. So you've got an engine on your side, because if he did get round at Cheltenham and made no big mistakes, he is hard to beat in any race he goes in.
Proper engine there. Yeah.
There's no doubt about that, and he's full of class, but maybe just a bit dozy, and that's something that not going to help you. Certainly
it's something as well, Dean, that's because I took a proper hiding for this, but he's not getting better either. As in, he's getting more dozy.
Sure.
It seems. Now, it might just be a simple case. Keith Donoghue has said it in his pieces, where a horse, sometimes a fall is the best thing for them, because it kind of cops them on a bit.
We're going to find out next time.
If that happens, that's great. But if he does this again the next time, any semblance of it, you'd have to take him on all day long at 7-2 for an RSA.
Well, one thing for sure, they're definitely going to race again, because they won't go to Cheltenham off the back of that. So providing he's all A1, they will race again. Let's talk about a couple of Irish ones that I also wanted to pick up on, the likes of Forheen and Notebook, because when we did the podcast pre-Christmas, I think David Weldon said that Notebook wasn't was a big player in Fakir the Dairy's race, and so it proved. And probably we didn't give Notebook enough time, perhaps, to discuss, because we're all on the Fakir the Dairy's train and the Samco train, and Samco's train went wrong. Fakir the Dairy's train ran well, but got beaten by a nice horse in Notebook. And Forheen is there. I mean, Paddy, you must have watched these races. I might start with Forheen. I mean, where do you start with Forheen? Horse of the decade, ending the decade as good as he started it by winning another Grade 1.
Yeah, unbelievable. And I mean, I just can't get over, a horse of his years, and to say he's been hurdling this long, the amount of exuberance he puts into jumping fences. I honestly thought it was just going to be for him, a horse who's had issues as well. All he'd want to do is get from A to B. Obviously, the engine is there and he'll get the job done. But I can't believe that the scope he shows over a fence. And, so he's obviously got a real relish just for racing this horse. And it's incredible to see. It's great. But to echo your thoughts about Notebook, I mean, that day I had actually read that quote. Did you say it was Dave Weldon?
Yeah, Dave, on here, like, he was saying that, Notebook was an absolute player in it and everyone should stop talking about the other ones. And he was right.
Yeah, and because he said it was more so that maybe people were knocking him on what he'd achieved over hurdles.
Yeah.
I mean, like at Leopardstown, I really, really fancied him, but I just thought, God, from what we've seen of Fakir Duderie, to try and give him weight was going to take a hell of a performance. So I passed him over, but fair play on the day, incredible performance, because I thought Joseph's horse, he ran his race and Notebook beat him and gave him weight. I thought it was an incredible performance.
Yeah, damn. I mean, you must have been impressed with Notebook. I think all eyes were on the second, and maybe not if you've had a bet on Notebook. I mean, in hindsight, it's a cracking bet.
In hindsight, absolutely cracking bet.
Yeah.
The thing is that the price is still very fair. Like, Fakir Duderie is too close now to him in the market because Notebook has given him weight now and a beating. I did think Mark Walsh, as much as he's been really the jockey of the year, I thought last year he was just outstanding all season. But I thought he did give Notebook a bit too much rope. I don't know whether he was like us a small bit and underestimated the horse as well. Yeah. It also has to be factored in that Henry de Brahma's horses seem to run about 10 pounds above themselves, all of them. He had an absolutely brilliant Christmas. But still, it's another horse that is just reaching the absolute top of his game, and he'll keep improving. And because he's with the Henry de Bromhead stable, he might just stay at a backable price on the day, because really you have to mark him up now for the fact that he doesn't have to give Fakir Duderie weight this year now. So it's a absolutely cracking performance.
Okay, one more race before we do move on, and maybe we will talk about Fiddler on the Roof, who won at the weekend, and of course Envoi Allen. Was the big run from Monolith, but getting beat by Delta Work in a race where probably both of those horses were a little bit discarded. The Savills, which was an absolute cracking race. Whether it's thrown up a Gold Cup winner in Delta Work, I don't know, but surely he's back in the picture.
Has to be back in the picture, because again, the Gold Cup is also a bit of a fumbling mess at the moment as well. I mean, Albin Fodor came out over Christmas and was very good, didn't beat much, but he didn't have to. We know he's alive, we know that this route suits him, so he's the 4-1 favourite now, and that is completely fair enough. But Delta Work, it was everything that the yard have been saying. They were saying that this horse needs to have a pace to aim at because he's a bit lazy, and he really rattled home late. Monolith has done this in the past in this race. He definitely won't see out a Gold Cup trip, but they're putting him away for the Gold Cup now.
Some ride by Rachel, wasn't it, when the irons came out, and still found a way to get the horse
brilliant ride. And he's a real honest horse. He just doesn't quite, it's not that he doesn't stay, it's just he doesn't stay as well as other horses do, and he's ran a blind there. But Delta Work has to be part of that Gold Cup picture, and people were far too quick to write off that RSA from last season as being crap all of a sudden, despite the fact that we hadn't seen an awful lot of them. Delta Work had only flopped once in a race that just wasn't ran to suit him. So it's great to see that happen, because it backs up my Gold Cup fancy, which we will discuss later on.
Kind of does. We will come on to that. I will give a shout out to the Big City Bank and Noel Hayes, who did put up quite a convincing case for Delta Work before the race, which I'd read and dismissed.
Same as that.
Quite incorrectly. So well done to him. All right. Envoi Allen won at the weekend as expected. I think that just enhanced the idea that it will go for the Ballymore demo.
100%. People cribbed this for him for some reason, which
I mean, you can crib it. It was good.
I don't understand. At all. They want him to go away and win by 10-15 lengths. That's just not the kind of horse that he is. Even last year in the Champion Bumper, Jamie Codd said afterwards that he could have went around again. He just needs to, he seems to really want to have a horse beside him, and then he goes on and win snug enough. Davy Russell hadn't done anything with him. He's beaten a very good horse there. So like that horse in second, Elixir Dene, I think that horse could go very well in a Supreme as well.
Yeah.
I think he could end up being a big price for something. I hope they don't go to Ballymore with him. I hope they go to Supreme, go from the front like they did, and they might catch them out with that horse. He's an interesting bet in that, actually. But Envoi Allen is streets clear of anything else I've seen this season.
Yeah,
and I think he'll continue to be so.
He does look the shining light going into Cheltenham. If you had to hang your hat on just one horse, that's probably where you'd go. Paddy, I'm going to ask you about one more horse before we do take a break here on the Racehour podcast, and that was Fiddler on the Roof, who won the Tolworth there at the weekend. He looks a proper stamp of a horse.
Yeah, that was a real good performance at Sandown. And I think the one thing that really stood out for me was, conditions on the day were really taking their toll, even, especially up the straight over them hurdles. The sun was in their eyes. There was a lot of horses sort of guessing at hurdles. And, there was just sort of plenty to overcome. Now, in fairness, Fiddler on the Roof, he gave weight to the second of Gavin Cromwell's, but just when you watch him, you just think, God, this horse, he's really wasting his time jumping hurdles, isn't he? Because he's just such a strong horse.
You could definitely see that. I mean, he looks so big. He was dwarfing them, I thought, beforehand. I thought Gavin Cromwell's horse actually was given a really nice ride to kind of pick up the pieces in behind that. Jeremy's Flame, was it? Yeah,
Jeremy's Flame. And I mean, the thing is, they've played a blinder with Jeremy's Flame because, they've picked up a lovely bit of black type, and that's how they rode her. On paper, the form looks absolutely fantastic, but Fiddler on the Roof, he's absolutely bolted up. And I say, conditions on the day, they weren't really ideal for horses to pick up from the back of the last and quicken, but he's a big, strong lad, this. And I mean, I'd say Colin Tizard, I can fairly guarantee that this chap will pop a fence before his summer holidays, because I'd say they're absolutely rubbing their hands at the thought of getting him going over a fence next week. But yeah, he's got a fair old engine, this chap.
Interesting time of it actually for Tizard with his novices, because Master Debonair, as we picked up earlier, was also very good in, I guess on the road to Cheltenham, and they're going to make some decisions. Who do they go and take on? I don't think anyone's going to be wanting taking on Envoi Allen. No doubt Colin Tizard won't be scared of one horse, but at the same time, he's got to split up a few decent animals, and the likes of Time Hill as well with Hobbs. There is some strength on the UK side of the water, so we will see where they all line up. We're going to take a break now, unless anyone else has anything to discuss on here. What we will pick up on the second half of the show is whether we need a 4 or 5 day festival. Some of that scandal over Altior's disappearance from this weekend's racing. Some of the weekend preview we'll do, and then we'll be talking about the Cheltenham anti-post market for the Gold Cup.
You're listening to the Racehour podcast, brought to you by bookmakers.co.uk. Check out bookmakers.co.uk each and every day for tips, news and the best odds for horse racing. Looking for a new bookmaker and the best sign-up offers in the industry? You'll find that at bookmakers.co.uk, sponsors of the Race Hour.
Okay, welcome back to the Race Hour, brought to you with our friends at bookmakers.co.uk. It's myself, Dean Ryan, Paddy Aspell and Diarmuid Nolan. On this half of the show, we're going to have a look at some of the weekend racing ahead. Now, it's not the strongest weekend racing cards, and also been made a little bit weaker by a couple of high-profile defections. We will talk about them as we kick through them. Why don't we kick off with, we'll do the TV stuff, chaps. So we'll kick off with Warwick and their 3-mile novice chase at 150 on Saturday. Highest sum for Colin Tizard, currently tops the market here. David Bridgewater's interesting runner. The conditional is in the field. It's kind of 4-1 bar those top two. I don't know if we have any fancies for it at this early stage. I can see a couple of them jocked up. Ardlethen is jocked up for Harry Skelton with Dan, and Kim Bailey and David Bass will be responsible for 2 for Gold. So there's 2 that look like they will show up. Yeah,
the conditional will probably looks like he'll end up in the classic chase.
Yeah.
Is where you'd imagine he'd go, unless they wanted to pick up something a small bit easier here. But you'd imagine he'd be a shorter price now if he was running here. Ardlethen is the one that I'm quite interested in. This horse has carried through some decent form, like beating Lisnagar Oscar this season, second to Sam Spinner and third to Danny Whizbang. Meets absolutely nothing like that in this race. Highest Sun is a good horse, but wouldn't be anything that you'd be getting overly excited about. So as much as the rest of the field, it just doesn't excite me at all. I think Ardlethen is the one who carries in the best form and therefore is the best bet team.
Okay. Paddy, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, highest sun. It was a match race, wasn't it? Plumpton the last day, and look, he got the job done. But prior to that, he was second behind the horse of Nicky's Pim, who's had a very, very good year. He's only 3 lengths behind him, and 4.25 lengths behind Champ when he won at Newbury back in November. So he hasn't really done an awful lot wrong, albeit in small fields. But at least he has got a fair bit of high level chasing experience now, and he's jumped around a couple of pretty decent tracks. But I thought Kim Bailey's horse, 2 for Gold, he won 34 days ago at Kelso. Now, I mean, on all figures he had to win, and he actually won at a time when I thought the yard was just struggling to get one's head in front. So that could be maybe sort of boosted a little bit, but it's another one. He's probably going to be the pace angle of the race, and we've got to see who turns up, because the conditional, he's got another entry as well, but he's a very, very tough horse. Maybe probably better off in a handicapped conditional, but still, it's not a bad little event, this.
No, some decent horses in here. The one I thought might be interesting is Whatmore, if you're going to take a double figure price right now, because Henry Daly's horses, when they are completing, and he's had some terrible luck over the last 10 or 20 runners or so, when they are completing, they're running big races. So I'd be interested to see who jocks up on that, and if there's less than 8 on the day, it might be worth taking the double figures now about Whatmore. But some nice horses in there. Highest Sun definitely deserves to be favourite after bumping into the likes of Pim and Champ and then getting it done in that match last time at Plumpton on bad ground, because the ground there currently looks set to ride pretty soft, so that will suit. Okay, that was the opening race there that we were going to talk about. The next one is a bit of a talking point anyway, because there's no Altior in it, and that's the Unibet Silviano Conti chase, the grade 2 at Kempton. Now, it was going to be over 2.5 miles and slightly further, and to me, when I heard Altior was going to go in this race, I was like, well, the dream is still on. This horse is still going to stay up and trip. Looked like they hadn't given up on keeping him staying, but then news was emerging that he wasn't going to run, and the news was emerging through the betting markets, which I never like to see, because Nicky Henderson has a high profile association with Unibet, and there seems to be some kind of embargo on him telling you this information because he hasn't written his column yet, and that stinks a little bit, Demo.
It does. I mean, like, the betting markets and everything else is a $5 billion a year industry, and we're looking here at a horse that has drifted from 4-1 on out to 5-2, and our own press can't tell us why, because the trainer in question has signed up to a bookmaker who are releasing all of his news. Like, I have no problem with these bookmaker sponsored blogs. I
actually really enjoy them. I really
enjoy them, because
I enjoy them.
Like the Paul Nicholls videos with Betfair, like, that's all done properly, and it's very good preview on races. But Gordon Elliott's still able to ring up the racing post and say this horse is injured, can't run. Like, all that sort of stuff needs to hit the press straight away, because you're dealing ethically here. It's not anything else. You're dealing with the whole image of the sport, the PR of the sport. And Unibet to have Nicky Henderson signed into this deal, now stupid of Nicky Henderson as well, but to be signed into a deal where the only way that he can release news now is via them. So what's happening is that the markets are moving, then he's tweeting, and then it's hitting the Unibet website. It's just not good enough at all.
See, the layers, Unibet included, will hold their hands up afterwards and go, look, we're refunding everyone. But that's not really the point. No, the point is missed. It's not really about the monetary value. It's about the fact that, Joe Blogs on Twitter is tweeting Altior's not running this weekend, and he's no idea only that Betfair suddenly got him at 4-1 when he was odds on, and Top Notch suddenly odds on for a race when he was 4-1. So the market tells you, so we don't need Unibet to tell us, so maybe we should all just cotton on and get on with it and play accordingly. But if the bets are all going to be voided anyway, we're wasting our time. Just take the embargo away.
But this isn't a black and white decision. It's not like people keep saying, the BHE need to ban bookies' blogs. That's not the problem.
No, that's missing the problem.
Completely missing the problem. The problem is that news coming from a yard should be coming from the yard to our trade paper, which is the Racing Post. That's what should be happening, or whoever. It should not be a case where that's happening. Bookies, previews, all that sort of stuff, absolutely fine. But the BHA does need to get involved with this. I do believe that news coming from a yard should not be filtered through bookmakers.
So look, Nicky Henderson could have tweeted, Altior will not run this weekend. Full news in my Unibet blog later on today. Not wait the 4 hours while he rings up whoever he has to ring up and have the chat and then write a piece. Anyway, Paddy, you can weigh in on this if you want, or you can tell me who's going to win the Unibet Silviano Conti chase at Kempton on Saturday.
Can you hear me, boys?
Yeah, we can hear you, Paddy. I'm sure. I've no doubt you tuned out during that.
Sorry, it dropped out just as you were getting stuck in about the Unibet thing.
But you missed. Do you think Top Notch will be taking this Grade 2 on Saturday, Paddy?
Well, I mean, he was last year's winner, and I just think, in fairness to Top Notch, he's got an excellent record chasing. I mean, he's the highest rated here, and he is going to run off levels with Frodon, who he's rated £3 better. And for me, Frodon, I love the old horse, but he's been pretty underwhelming both times we've seen him this year. The thing about Frodon is the way he runs and goes through his races. He did have some hard runs last year, and as genuine and as honest as he is, it looks to me like maybe it's just sort of reflecting in what we're seeing of him this year. So look, obviously with the top horse gone, it's Top Notch to win. He's a course and distance winner. For me, the only one there that would stand out, and he is going to be a little bit of a price, is Tom Gretton's horse, Puerto Rico, because the thing about Puerto Rico is, if he didn't have T. Gretton next to him, Tom Gretton's a very capable and trainer and a nice fella, but Puerto Rico, if he was trained by a higher profile trainer, this horse would get an awful lot more recognition than what he does, because he's a little bit like Candace Obo. He loves flat tracks, loves big fences, and like that was a massive run in the Peterborough at Huntingdon. So he's going to be a huge price in, but make no bones about it, he's worth his place there on Saturday, and he won't be a million miles away. I'm not saying he's going to be Top Notch, because he lacked the class, but he'll definitely pick up a bit of money for connections.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to get 5, Dermo. I mean, are you trying to find a bet in the race?
Yeah, I thought that Puerto Rico at 13-2 was the bet, to be honest with you. I mean, 3/4 of a length down last time in the Peterborough Chase, and was getting £4 and gets £6 this time from Top Notch. Top Notch, a brilliant horse, kind of is the one to beat. I think Frodon's cried enough for this season. I think he will bounce back. Paul Nichols is very good at getting them back like this, but I think he's just cried enough at the moment. And Puerto Rico is really the bet. I mean, whether you go with or without, he kind of is the one, you know.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a straightforward form case made for that horse at a decent price. Paddy, one final thought on this before we do move on. Altior's only going to get one entry at the Cheltenham Festival, according to Nicky Henderson, and that is in the Queen Mother Champion Chase. So it makes that race a little bit more interesting if they can get him back and on point, because you've got the likes of Chacun Pourçart, Aplutard and Defi Desoy. We could have a 4-way go in the Champion Chase, and that's not to diminish anyone else who might enter for it.
Yeah, and to be honest, Dino, I think the thing about Altior is now, because we've had all this, you know, he's missed a couple of engagements that he's had, and the last time we seen him, and he was beaten. And let's not forget, you know, Nico got down off him as soon as he crossed the line at Ascot that day, and he knew he'd been to the races and he had a hard race. Now, it's probably the hardest he's ever been pushed, Altior. So I think if he does turn up at the festival, thank God, it looks like people are probably and should get a bit of value about him.
Yeah, potentially so, yeah.
You know, obviously he has got a little bit to prove again, albeit how can you say that about a horse who's been defeated once in 20 races? But off the back of what happened at Ascot, it's really going to test his mettle now the next time, and there has been a couple of little bumps in the road since, as we know. So yeah, I mean, it could just help people to get a bit more value about him.
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility he turns up somewhere before in a dot around race, or he does a race course gallop, and the vibes will be good, and that price will start coming back for him to run a big race there. I just want to see those 4 go toe to toe, because I think that'll be a cracking race. Hopefully they get him back.
I would agree with you about what you and Dermo are saying about this Unibet stuff. I mean, imagine years ago, you would have never seen this sort of thing going on. You know, and I just don't think it sits very well with people. I mean, there'll be certain trainers would not in any shape or form entertain that sort of stuff. And so it is a little bit hard to swallow with people. But you know, obviously they sponsor the race, their yard sponsor, Nico is sponsored by them. It's just a little bit sort of snug and it isn't going to sit very well with everybody, is it?
Yeah, it's a tricky one to resolve, and as you say, snug is a good word. I think the BHA just need to make it that there's no embargo on declaration information. If they just take that away, you can't have an embargo with a trainer and a layer on declaration information, then it's all fair game. Do your previews, talk about your horses, go and visit the stable, do videos, because that's great content for a racing public. I think if, like I said before, if Nicky had just tweeted first thing that morning, do you know what, we've decided Altior's not going to run this weekend, and it'll all be in my Unibet blog later on. He serves his sponsor, and he serves as well the best interests of racing, I think.
It looks like Unibet are running the Twitter page though as well.
Yeah, it does look like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I mean, I'm sure he
obviously
does.
he's going through channels by the time it gets out. Like, I don't think anyone there is trying to pull the wool over markets or anything else.
Exactly.
I'm fairly sure it's just going through like any decision that we make, even here, Dean, any decision goes through 3 or 4 different people, and it can take a while to come back. That's all that's happening, but it's just sickening that a bookmaker is approving what news is coming from.
And it may be like, even the market fluctuations and that could be anybody associated with this horse. Anyone who is
Willie Mullins has no association with yards, but you can tell at times what horse is running by the movement.
And it's not big money.
No,
there have been instances before where it's been bigger money and there's been bigger issues to discuss. In this case, it's just a few bets and a market change, and it's like, oh, this just looks wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to get rid of. Get rid of it looking wrong.
Exactly.
And it can be fixed. And I don't want anyone to do anything ridiculous. Not that they'll do it on my say so. Don't ban bookmaker blogs and things like that. They make a lot of sense for the industry. But snug was a good way to put it, I think, Paddy. Let's talk about the 225 at Warwick, which is a novice hurdle grade 2 contest there. And Dan and Harry look like they've lined one up, the Skeltons, with Shan Blue already jocked up. Interesting to see Noel Kelly has a runner in there with McParlin booked. And he's a jockey right around Fairyhouse a fair bit. I'm a fan. But Mossy Fen, I've got the feeling we might all be rowing on this because we talked about it in nice ways previously.
Yeah, he got badly snatched up at Cheltenham behind Redford Road that day. As well as that, his kind of relative lack of experience would have went against him, because that Redford Road is a real tough, battle-hardened sort. So Mossy Fenn's gone from 8s now into 6s, and kind of that's his best price around the place. And you just kind of have to look at him and say that I think he's the best horse in this race. I mean, the favourite's decent and everything else, but I think Mossy Fenn is potentially that kind of that real standout horse here. He gained really proper experience last time at Cheltenham, and being snatched up around the bend that time, it just did him no good at all. He was knocked out of the race really, and if he gets a clear run here, then I think he takes all the beating. Yeah,
I'd be one to row with Mossy Fen. Interesting, Gordon Elliott's lining up a couple in this handicap just to check their marks. I was just about to say that Cromwell has 2 at Kempton as well. Right. They're both in with marks 140. Be shocked if any of them run. There's a Pertemps trial that a few of them might run in. But bar that, they're just looking for their marks now. Well, Boris is sitting there on 147, so Gordon will be noting that down and then taking it back out, I would imagine. Interesting that they do that, Paddy. You're a fan of Mossy Fen, though.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit I was disappointed the last day, albeit I'm a big fan of the winner as well, from the Twiston Davis stable. But yeah, for me, he'd have to bounce back a little bit. I think he's all about staying this horse. He wants a real test, in my opinion, but I think this is quite a warm race. I mean, I thought the Shan Blue form, that is pretty decent now, this Sunny Shan 2. And even the horse that Ben Pauling's at Doncaster the other day, if he turns up one touch, that was a really good performance the other day. And Ben Pauling, it's great to see that he's let his horses sort of compete and take the chance again, because he just had to put the anchor on him there for ages. But they seem healthy and they're running pretty well now. And I thought that was a good effort by his chap the other day. One touch, he would have to step up again, but he could just be one that could go under the radar. And obviously this Irish horse of Noel Kelly's, I mean, what's the McParlin guy's first name?
Noel.
Yeah. I mean, he's some boy, the way he rides these horses, he just sits up on them there with so much confidence. He's incredible, really, for an amateur. And like the other day at Catrick, the horse that he beat, there's no back number at all. And, it's a bit deceiving. You don't know how much horse Noel has got, but he made this chap look like he absolutely bolted up. And it was a real good effort, and it'd be interesting to see if he does turn up at the weekend.
When I used to frequent Fairyhouse all the time, I still go a good bit, but I don't get as much time. But when I used to go all the time, whenever he got up on one in the pink colours, I think for his old man, perhaps pink suitcase. I remember there used to be some gambles going around the course. He's a fine pilot, interesting runner in there. There's a good few in there that could turn up with solid form, and that market's going to take a bit more shape. I wonder if the value's been sucked a little bit out of Mossy Fenn's price over the since these markets have gone up, but still around there, 11-2, 6-1 is available. I think it's a pretty hot race that for Warwick. Good for them to have a big card on the go. The Lanzarote is going to take some solving, Dermo. That goes to post at 240. Kempton. Pre-Dorhey is the current market leader, around 4-1. Not Chapari for Ollie Murphy's in there, and those JP colours. Interesting to see what we get from that. And as you said, Gavin Cromwell has entered a couple around the place at Kempton, including in this race. I wonder if he'll turn up with Alpha Mix, but what do you make of the race? I find it very hard.
Very hard. Alpha Mix was brilliant last time, but I just have an awful feeling that mark of 140 would get that horse into most Cheltenham Festival races. So that would kind of say to me that, like, I think this Alpha Mix is very, very good. That performance last time at Navan, when beating Top Moon, was an absolutely serious performance. I really fancy Top Moon on the day. And this horse just kind of flew by him and backed late, like they really fancied him, because that Top Moon is very, very smart. So that horse, wherever this horse does end up, that Alpha Mix, definitely have him on your mind, but I just don't think he's going to run. Burrows Edge is the one that I landed on, Dean. Nicky Henderson won this race back in 2018. We'll probably have to watch Unibet now to see if he is running or not. But run back in 2018 with William Henry, who obviously went on to win the Coral Cup last season. And that horse had flopped over fences, and Nicky Henderson completely rerouted him and brought him here. The exact same thing with Burrows Edge, who was going very well 4 out and just fell. This horse has got some decent form last season. Absolutely nothing outstanding, but still, in respect to this race, is quite strong. Gets in here off 132, so we'll be running off 10 stone 10. And I think Burrows Edge should, in my opinion, if he does rack up here, could just be a bit too good for what does look a poor enough Lanzarote hurdle.
Well, poor and definitely tricky to solve, whether it's poor
or not, doesn't matter.
Is it poor enough? Yeah. I mean, I can't find a standout horse for me. I'm going to take a flyer with a long price one, but Paddy, you're next.
Always a tricky one. This is very, very competitive, and generally these are very, very well run races. But I thought Ollie Murphy's horse for JP, Nochapari, he looked to have a lovely big frame of a horse at Aintree when he won 35 days ago. And to be honest, this is a yard, I don't know whether you would agree, lads, they've not really, for me, got firing on all cylinders throughout this season. They've had patches, good patches, but they've never really, like, a Fergal O'Brien, someone like that, where they've just been churning winners out all season. They've just not really sort of gotten to that stage for me. But this horse in particular won at a time when the yard were really struggling to have a winner. And that I always think is very, very encouraging. That was a good effort at Aintree. I just like the way he went about it. And he's only 6-year-old. And obviously, if Nicky declares his horse at the top, he's going to have 10 stone 8. He really is low mileage, this horse. But like I say, it does worry me that the yard have just drifted in and out of form this year. Yeah. But like I say, he did win at a time when they really were just struggling to get one's head in front. The horse that Dermo talked about, Alpha Mix, I mean, for me, he just looks like a horse who has really got it together of late, especially the last day. That was a very, very tidy performance. Probably in a very, very tight race like this, he is going to have his fair share of weight. So it'll be interesting to see if Gavin is going to stick one of the young lads on just to fetch a few pound off his back, because it's such fine margins in a race like this. But for me, I'm going to stick with the JP horse here, Notrapari.
Okay, and interesting, you mentioned Ollie Murphy's form. Like, lately hasn't been too bad, actually. Looks like he's having a little one of those purple patches that he sometimes gets. Champagne Super Over was very impressive in a bumper recently on debut, and I think that's a horse to take forward, hopefully, for another big bumper and then maybe a crack at the Cheltenham Festival. So he's got some nice horses there. Maybe he'll have one here to pick up a Lanzarote. I was going to throw a big price one into the mix. I don't expect anyone to chime in on this because it's a bit wild, but Aragon de Chanay for Gary Moore, if it gets jocked up, I might be having a few quid on that at 40s. I think there's enough form in there, lights of form, beating Townsend and finishing behind Malaya in pretty hot enough contests that would give it a squeak. And they had a little eye-opener here on Boxing Day, Stevens's Day at Kempton. Now, well beaten, I have to say. So, if the money comes, that will obviously increase my confidence. Okay, interesting run. interesting race, I should say, the Unibet Lanzarote. That's at Kempton on Saturday, the 240. And we've got another absolute monster to try and solve in the McCoy Contractors Civil Engineering Classic Handicap Chase, the Grade 3 over 3 mile and 5 furlongs, no less, at Warwick, a part of their big day this weekend. A few interesting runners in here that plenty will know lots about, like Lebroy, Boba Mac, Kimberlite Candy. The conditional, you think this is where this is going to turn up, Dermo?
Yeah, I do. Just by the bits of market moves that there's been, obviously a very not so liquid market, but still there's just a strength behind him. And why wouldn't he after that run last time? In this race, Rigadine de Beauchamp won this before for Benicia Williams. He was just the definition of a big boat, and that is exactly what you're looking for here. It's soft ground there at the moment at Warwick. This race is going to take some getting. You just you really are better off to stick with a horse who's been there and done it kind of over an extreme trip like this. And just for that simple reason, the top two in the market do kind of look the two. But Kimberlite Candy, if he does show up here at 6-1, and an amazing performance last time over 3 miles and 2 furlongs in that Beecher Chase at Aintree, jumped really well, was staying on very late, just kind of couldn't quite catch walking the mill. Tom Lacey's done a wonderful job in getting this horse back to form again, and this Kimberlite Candy at 6-1 for me, if he does indeed turn up, I think he'll take the world of stopping, because those extra 3 furlongs will really help him.
Trainer in flying form, going places is Tom Lacey, and got a nice runner to go to war with. I think me and Paddy are going to end up with the same horse in this race. Now, we haven't discussed it before, but Paddy, we were big fans of Big River before it ran at Cheltenham in November. He's jocked up already for Lucinda Russell with Derek Fox on board. It's a double figure price at 14. He's got brought down at Kelso early December. If that horse is okay, I know he's 10. There's not going to be many more opportunities. I'm hoping that runs a big race.
Yeah, I did see he jocked up 10-year-old. Now, it hasn't got a bad race weight of 11-1, but you just worry the horses get out of the habit of winning. It's been a long time since he's had any sort of luck, really, this chap. He could certainly do with that, and I'd be long overdue, to be honest. But he has an engine, we know that, but you'd like to see just a little bit more before you would start to have him on your side at the minute. So I thought this was very, very competitive, to be honest. I've really liked this horse of David Bridgewater's. I think he was a very, very shrewd purchase by him, the conditional, and all 3 appearances this year he's just done nothing but improve. And you know, he certainly, although they have managed to land a big pot with him already, you know, it's by no means out of the question that he could pop up and get another one. Kimberlite Candy, like Dermo mentioned, that was a real good run the last day. He bounced right back to form, this horse, and I thought on the day got a real good ride off Richie McLernan. So the other one I wanted to mention was, although he's going to have plenty of weight, for me, although he's 8-year-old, he hasn't really, I wouldn't say he's exposed over fences, is Hobbsy's horse, Steely Edition, up the top. I had a bit to do with this horse when he, in his pointing days, was a friend of mine had him, and he won a point first time. He's always been a little bit quirky, but he's always had plenty of ability. Jumping fences was a little bit of a worry for him early doors, but his jumping is much better now. And although 11-11, I'm hoping Micheál Nolan rides him, because Micheál knows him very, very well, because he is, like I say, he is a bit quirky. So maybe you could get a bit of value simply because, you know, Dickie won't be on him and he has got plenty of weight. Steely Edition a bit closer up to the top there.
Yeah, I mean, currently he's around 8-9-1, and there's literally 8 horses between that price and 5s. So that shows you the nature of the race that we're trying to work out here. So a shout there for Steely Edition, potentially interesting if Micheál Nolan does get the leg up. Kimberlite Candy, interesting for Dermo, and I'm going to side with Big River. Perhaps that, unless you lads nap in that race, that might be mine this weekend. One more race that we want to talk about before we do move on, and we are going to take that anti-post look at the Cheltenham Gold Cup market. It's the Unibet new Uniboost Handicap Chase 315 at Kempton. Dermo, I may as well come to you first, because a horse that you kind of picked up on earlier on in this season and previously, because it's been well thought of, is Nicky Henderson's On the Blind Side. Yeah,
it was just he was kind of kicked out of the way last time, I know, by a good horse in Finger the Pulse, but Riders in the Storm even.
Yeah,
Finger the Pulse was the next Galway play winner.
That could be some form though.
It could, but just to me, he looks like a horse that's kind of he's a bit sick of it. I'm not sure how much love of the game that this horse actually retains. He was staying on and on and on again. It's a race, Dean, to be honest with you, that I've just completely shirked for the time being, and I just didn't want to land on one. But as far as on the blind side goes, I've backed him twice this season, and I said that'll be it.
Jenkins is in there at 40-1 if you want to row back the years as far as you can remember.
Yeah, but you're rowing back the years to what exactly?
Charlie Longston now in charge of getting that absolute nutcase to deliver on the track. Only 8. Jenkins, it might go off in front. I just wonder how long it might stay there. Looks an interesting race, Paddy.
Yeah, it is. You can't really say that any of these in the lineup are arriving into this contest in red hot form, to be honest. So it's probably going to boil down to whose turn it is on the day. Neil Mulholland's horse down the bottom, he's got a lovely racing weight, but he's been frustrating, finger on the switch. He will stay this trip, stuff like that, no worries there. But I mean, on the blind side, although he is going to have plenty of weight, he's a course and distance winner, and probably on the face of it, that run last time, although comfortably held by 7 lengths, Riders on the Storm is a horse who's come over to Ireland and looks very reasonably handicapped. So I mean, that form alone is pretty decent. And the last time he did actually win, this chap, it was round Kempton, and it was in January last year, so off a mark of 149. So really, he probably ticks a lot more boxes here than the bulk of his rivals, if I'm honest.
Yeah, he's my selection there too, and I think it does boil down to, it seems connections. I think it's the Spencers and Nicky Henderson just going to keep going to the wellwood on the blind side and get as much racing in, because jumping just looked a little bit sticky first time up behind Vindication, wasn't it? And then pulled up in the Hennessy, a really big run behind Riders on the Storm, and that could end up being almost grade 1 form. So I'm going to side with on the blind side. I think the 4-1 is probably where I would end up. Now we're going to take a quick break here, and what we'll do is we'll come back after that and we'll talk about the Cheltenham anti-post market for the Gold Cup.
Don't delay. Head over to bookmakers.co.uk today.
And welcome back to the third and final part of the Racehour podcast, brought to you with our friends at bookmakers.co.uk. Diarmuid Nolan, Paddy Aspell, and myself, Dean Ryan, in the towers of bookmakers.co.uk. Quick look now at the anti-post market for the Gold Cup, which has taken a bit of a shake-up over Christmas. Album Photo came out, won exactly the same race he did last year at Tremor. I saw a great tweet, actually. It's not often you see the Gold Cup favourite prep at Tremor, actually only 12 months ago. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Album Photo is heading the market. Some places as short as 7-2 for the Gold Cup, and that's because some lines were kind of missed. Some performances weren't delivered from the ones around them. Candazobra is a big market mover into 8-1. Kenboy around 7-1 best price, and I thought it was a wholly adequate run in the Savills, and actually a good few behind in that Savills chase will be thinking they haven't left anything behind, which is good, and they can definitely improve. Lost in Translation, one of the biggest negative movers of the Christmas period after his run, which needs some explaining. They're going to have to go back to the drawing board and see what they can do with that one. Santini, of course, we haven't seen Dermo, so steady Eddie around 10s. Delta Worker mover upwards around 10-1, and then my horse that I think is still value right now because of another eye-catching run in that Savills is Presenting Percy. After that, you're probably finding horses I can't make cases for, likes of previous winner Native River, Monolith, who we all worry about the trip, and then anything else that might step into this. Derm, I'll let you have first crack.
So Kenboy, you can explain it like simply as without the prep run, he just wasn't as good. It was the same thing last season, really, and everything else as well. He kind of tends to need his prep run, which is completely understandable, really. But there's still just that. For me, I'm not sure how much Cheltenham actually suits him, which is the biggest concern. Album Photo, obviously, I loved him last season. Was on him for a long time. He's probably short enough now. Better horses than him haven't been able to retain a Gold Cup, so it's the question mark is still there. But he looked none the worse at Tremor. And if everyone else around him keeps kind of falling apart like they are, he probably will end up the bet on the day. But the more that you rattle through this market, I mean, everyone seems to be quite excited about Presenting Percy. I really amn't. I don't think he looks the same horse that he was. I think that RSA was his peak, and I think afterwards they've kind of messed around with him so much now that I think he might have fallen out of the habit of kind of winning as well. He could well be a genius move, and he could bounce back in the day, but there's absolutely no way that I'd be backing him at 12-1 for a Gold Cup. And the more you look at the top of the market, like I don't like Envoi for a Gold Cup. I definitely don't like Clandis for a Gold Cup. He's Silvio Conti 0.2. I don't like Lost in Translation for a Gold Cup, which I've already said. Delta Work, his jumping, he makes mistakes at the worst time. He could well win it, but you wouldn't want to be relying on him. Native River's too old. Monley won't stay. So the ones that I'm looking at obviously is Santini, who I've been talking about perpetually now for a long time. He's a super horse. This test of a Gold Cup is built exactly for him. He's going to run in the Prestbury Cup first of all, and then go to the Gold Cup. The less runs going into a Gold Cup, as has been proven the last few years, is the better. So he's had a lovely prep for this. Last time, wouldn't be worried about him. He's a big dope that takes a long time to get fit. But a Gold Cup, if you watch the RSA run, in which he had a terrible prep run, he nearly didn't run in that race because he'd missed a week of work. And the run in that RSA was outstanding. He just kind of, the way it tactically worked out for him, suited the winner and didn't suit him, in my opinion. He's only going to improve for that. He's a big lump of a horse who's not as slow as people make out that Santini is. He's not this big boat either. He was a horse that was good enough to win over 2 miles 5 over hurdles, beating Black Up, who's not a slow horse. And Santini was good enough to do that. This is a horse who, this test is perfect for him. He'll be able to lie up with the pace and kick late, and he'll stay all day. I think Santini at 10-1 is a whopping bet for this, and he's kind of is the forgotten horse in the market. And the other horse, Dean, at wild big odds, it's just because he was placed last year. I can see him being placed again. He's 50-1 in places with Betfair, etc. And Bristol de Mai is far too big as an each way bet at 50-1. So Santini at 10-1 is my idea for the winner of this race. But Bristol de Mai, for what he's achieved, the fact that the Gold Cup is his main target this season, I think there's no reason that horse should be 50-1.
Okay. I know you love Santini. We all know you love Santini, but you just said in your loving that he has had a brilliant prep. You hope he's going to have a brilliant prep.
Sorry.
Like that first run was bad.
It was bad, but it was, as I said, it's easily explained. He's a horse that takes a while to get fit. I mean, his first few runs of every season aren't outstanding. He's a big oaf that kind of does take a while to get going. And
the main takeaway for me with Santini is if he does go to that Prestbury Cup, Cheltenham, and wins, he could be favourite for this race.
Yes,
he could be favourite for this race.
Exactly.
And that's what you want when you're looking at an anti-post bet. Now, is this the target? Is he going to have a prep race that could completely change his price? He will. Yeah. And providing all well, he's going to turn up there.
It's the way Nico talks about him as well. Nico really lights up when he talks about Santini. He just really lights up.
Paddy, going to start you off with that Savills race, which Delta Work won, Monolith was second. I thought in behind the likes of the new connections, I should say, of Kenboy will be very happy with what they saw. And I thought Davy Russell, and this is the bit I wanted to pick you up on, I thought he was very quiet on Presenting Percy. He put him in the race, and when it kind of happened in front of him, I don't think he went hell out to win that race. I thought he got the perfect prep there. I don't know if we'll see him again, but if he was A1 and you remember what we saw in the RSA, Paddy, I'd like to know what you think about Presenting Percy for this year.
Yeah, he's I suppose he's a hard horse to weigh up, isn't he? Because, that was a massive run the time before. And obviously, over that trip the other day, they did ride him quiet. But look, I think it's more of a Pat Kelly thing, isn't it? They really like to keep their business their own, show their hand as little and as late as possible. But I don't know. I just thought he bombed out so badly in the Gold Cup last year, Presenting Percy, and I just thought it was similar sort of thing with this chap as well. There was whispers beforehand. We weren't really sure. He did turn up on the day, and he never. He ran no sort of a race, so it's difficult. I think the thing is, connections being as they are, everybody's always going to be guessing. And therefore, you probably want a bit. I mean, there's bits of 12-1 still going about for him, but that's the sort of price you'd want for him because there is risk attached. Yeah. But I didn't think he ran badly at all. But it was just, I would agree, Dino. It was as usual a little bit strange riding and hard to what sort of angle to come in at it from. But yeah, Kenboy, I thought that was reasonable. He was a little bit keen and gassy. He looked like he was going to drop away for a while, but he's actually finished off and ran quite nicely in the end. I'd say Connections were reasonably happy, to be fair. And he's pretty solid in the market as well. And I mean, I suppose there was question marks about the prep for Alboom Photo, wasn't it? I mean, your Gold Cup winner having his prep at Tramore and then going straight to the festival. But, trainers are creatures of habit, aren't they? And, if something works, generally they do try and repeat it. And so that's what they've done again this time. And I mean, that performance in the Gold Cup last year was an absolute career best by Alboom Photo, and he was very, very good. So he deserves to be at the head of the market. But I mean, look, lost in translation, you've got to completely put a line through the King George effort and hope that said they were going to tidy his wind up and that works. But he did bomb out very badly, and I was so disappointed with the way he fenced. He looked really, really out of sorts the other day. The other horse, obviously, I can't desert Colin's other horse, Native River, but I don't even want them to mention a set of blinkers around this horse when they're near a stable. I don't even want to talk about blinkers. Because, even if they were to run him the next time before Cheltenham, I'd be happy if they didn't even run him in a blinker, because they've used them the first time, and because Might Bite crashed out early doors, it was like they'd wasted a bullet, really, having the blinker on. Because I do think a horse of his years, although he's been absolutely crying out for them, I want them on his head for as little time as possible to have as much effect as what you want. But, I think if the blinkers have the effect again, what I think they'll have, I think although he is a year older now, he is definitely one of the ones that's more exposed. But I really do think the blinkers are a massive addition to this horse, because he hasn't gotten older without getting wiser, Native River. And for me, at round, I mean, there's still 20s about for Native River, and sort of should be. But I do think if the boys are as limited as possible as they can with the blinker, and just try and save them for the big day in March, I think he'll still have a big shout, this horse.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. If you had to have a bet today, that would be the one you'd go for then. Blinkers hopefully omitted next time they run, because they're bound to run once more, aren't they?
Exactly, yeah. Even, the next day, if they wanted to go back to their old cheap pieces, and then just to save, because that's a massive bullet that you could use on the day for a Gold Cup, especially for a horse like him, because, like I said, he's a clever old lad, and a set of blinkers in a big race at that could be a real massive addition.
Okay. Are we missing maybe giving Kim Bailey's horse a mention? Vindication, who came and won like a good handicap lot, should, if they're all okay with Vindication, is he going to be okay? There wasn't any news, Demo, was he, about him being missing?
No. The only news you need to know about him really is that he's just not good enough to win a Gold Cup, isn't it?
Thank you. But, I'm just trying to find something down the list that might run one more time and put his name on there. I wonder if that will run against Santini. I think that would be the race where they should go with the likes of Vindication. So if you wanted to pick an absolute fly up at 33s or 40s, there's one there. Okay. Dermo, if you had to have a bet right now, I don't need to ask you, do I have Santini?
Santini and an each way on Bristol de Mai.
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to stick with Presenter Percy, who I think looks like it's going to come to the boil again on the day, and I'd rather be on at 12s than 6-4 when everyone's on.
Yeah, that's fair.
But, we'll find out. And I completely get the Native River angle. This race, when you look back at previous Gold Cups and you just look at the results, now forget what you thought at the time, and you see the result where you've got Manila Rocco, you've got Annabelle Fly, you've got horses like that, Bristol de Mai pitch up, and they're just absolute rock solid horses, and they do exactly what they do. There's going to be one of those in this year's Cheltenham Gold Cup that is second or third at 33-1. You'll all go, well, that was obvious. I thought it was a Grand National horse.
Bristol de Mai last year, it's exactly.
Yeah. So there's no harm in finding those. Hopefully we've helped you out a little bit if you are getting involved with the Cheltenham Anti-Post market for the Gold Cup. Now, thanks very much, Diarmuid Nolan, Paddy Aspell, and Alex on production. This is the Racehour podcast brought to you at bookmakers.co.uk. We'll be back next week, and Happy New Year to everyone listening in. Thanks very much.
You've been listening to The Race Hour, brought to you by bookmakers.co.uk, your best bet for tips, news and bookmaker reviews.